Did I scare you? Today I was able to catch up with my friend and former supervisor, the leader of entertainment operations at Busch Gardens Williamsburg in Virginia, Jeff Corriveau. Every year, Busch Gardens Williamsburg puts together an event called Howl O Scream. Last year, the event featured 6 haunted houses, 7 scare zones, 2 DJs, 3 shows, and 2 escape rooms. And as one of 2 swing stage managers for the event, I covered 17 of those products. In case you can't tell, I love Halloween, and Jeff and I talked about exactly what it takes to put on such a big Halloween event every single year. And make sure you stick around till the end of the video because Jeff and I talk about exactly what kind of qualities it takes to be a successful theme park stage manager. My name is Kent, and this is your half-hour call.
Happy Halloween.
If this is your first time here, welcome. My name is Kent, and this is Half Hour Call. Half Hour Call is dedicated to shining the spotlight on technical theater, so make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you never miss another how-to video, interview with industry leaders like you are watching right now, or general theater update. Well, that's enough about me, so let's go ahead and dive into that interview. So thank you so much for being here today with me, Jeff. I figured since we're celebrating spooky season a little bit differently, it would be kind of fun to get to talk to some of the folks that make spooky season happen in years that are a little bit more traditional than 2020. The first thing I would love to ask you, what is your specific role or experience at Busch Gardens Williamsburg, and in what ways are you involved in the park's Halloween events?
I serve as entertainment operations leader, and the way I'm involved is everything operational for the park. So 2 things. Is the shows as well as the event side. So shows make sense, and the event side is everything that is like scare actors in the streets or the mazes, as they call them, things like that throughout the park. So that's what I oversee, which includes also about 1,200. Well, over the course of the year, 1,200 employees. During Howl O Scream, it's about 600 performers and technicians.
And can I throw a second question at you that is not on the list, a follow-up? What can you kind of translate that into a position in a regional theater? Like, what would that be, like the production manager, or more of a general manager, or a company manager, or a little bit of everything?
It is a little bit of everything, actually. And it's funny, our stage managers are a little bit of everything too. It's not traditional stage management. It does have a little bit of the production side, like that of a stage manager. It's keeping up the quality of what's happening. From the company manager side, there's a lot of human resource aspect of it that I deal with. In fact, I can tell you it's usually 8 to 12 hours of my week. Any week of Halloween is spent in human resource issues, whether we're in the event or it's the Monday after the event at the end of the weekend. It's everything from making sure things run smoothly to dealing with any kind of conflicts that might occur, as well as keeping up with the quality for which things are happening, the safety in which things are happening, the interaction with guests, any guest concerns that may come of these things, as well as coordinating with the rest of the park as far as the interaction between our team and all the other teams of the park. It's going into it is a much different endeavor than anything I've ever dealt in the regional theater world. And that's funny because this is a question I get asked a lot. It's how does this relate to stage management as I know it? And it's very similar, but I always tell people, think a little more as stage manager, company manager. And in the rehearsal process, there's a little bit of that production manager part, as opposed to just the rehearsal aspect of the stage manager. You know?
Yeah, so everything, in other words.
It makes for a great, wonderful turn of events every day of your life.
So how did you get this position? What was your work and education background, and had you had any history with Busch Gardens before this?
Wow. Yes, I did have experience with Busch Gardens before this. Before I took this position, I had worked for them for about 7 weeks as a stage manager for a show. And then the position opened, I interviewed, and 3 weeks later was offered the position. So I had been in the stage manager position for roughly 2.5 months, which included 2 weeks of rehearsal and 1 week of shows, and the rest were just Friday, Saturday, Sunday shows. That was it for those weeks. I think everyone kind of looked at it kind of weird, like, where did this guy come from? But prior to that, there was also 25 years of professional experience, and it was everything from, I've dealt with national tours, I've dealt with national events on dealing with people everywhere from 50 people to 20,000 guests at an event. I've dealt with production management. I've dealt with professional stage management, all the way down from the professional world of New York, all the way down to regional theater, including some work with community theater, which has paid off much more than I ever expected, particularly when you deal with new young performers in that respect. And as well as I have a technical background, I have a background in education, not in teaching, like an education degree, but in teaching college and university level classes. And then I ran a statewide touring program for an opera company for about 11 years as well. So it's not realizing at the time, a lot of the jobs I had are operations based. And you don't think of stage management that way. I didn't think of, the community outreach person at the opera as that kind of person, but it's all actually operations based. And even now when people say, I'm working on my resume to work in the normal world, I'm like focused on the operation stuff. You start using words like scheduled, supervised is the word, because no one knows what a stage manager is outside of those of us in the theatrical world. Area supervisor, I recently had to say to somebody, and all of a sudden like, oh, okay, I get that. And that's kind of exactly what that is. As far as my education goes, before I went to college, I was actually slated to major in genetics and veterinary medicine, which is something Kent didn't know.
I did not.
And Rhode Island has a very intensive science program. And then I did a show. I literally got bit by the bug. So I went to college for theater. I told my parents I was going to college for communications, TV and radio, with the hopes that they wouldn't fight back, and they didn't. So for the first 2 years that they paid for college, they thought I was majoring in television and radio, which has a lot of similar classes. It wasn't until after that I probably was like, I think I need to tell them, because now I only have theater classes. So poof, here we go. And my dad referred to it as majoring in unemployment. They at least knew at least it wasn't, I was in the sciences, but this whole time was doing whatever. So, and then after that, I didn't know what I wanted to do after graduating college, undergrad. So I chose to do a Master of Arts that way I could focus and figure out if I did it on the technical side or the other side of things, because like everyone, I went in as a performer, like most people, I went in as a performer. I wasn't any good at it. Then I stumbled onto stage management. I stumbled onto scenic design. I stumbled onto directing, which kind of encompassed everything. So I got a Master of Arts in Theater History and Criticism, and from that decided directing was where I was going, went on to my MFA from there. And that's kind of where things ended up. And second, I started grad school when I started doing actual professional work, more so. And I did a lot of it while I was in grad school, because I was lucky enough in both cases of grad school locations, I had a graduate assistantship for 4 of the 5 years I did grad school total. And the rest was, and the only reason the 5th year didn't happen is I was traveling simultaneously. And it was before a time where doing virtual classes, that didn't exist. That kind of stuff did not exist at that point. It was an absolute nightmare to coordinate it, but it was something that needed to happen.
I'm sure a lot of folks that as in March, when they started filing for unemployment potentially for the first time, they wish they had that majoring in unemployment.
Right. Yeah, see, that's what it was.
It is incredibly complicated.
Yeah, I'll tell you, filing for unemployment might require a master's in its own.
So what are some of the challenges that you face when putting together or maintaining and operating a Halloween event at a theme park?
I think one of the most difficult is the repetition for the performers, because like with everything, if you've ever been lucky enough to do a long run show, for example, that maybe runs 6 months, as opposed to if you're in a repertory theater type thing, or even a regional theater, the show may run a month. So by the time the cast gets going, they're finding their footing, and look, it's closing kind of thing, even though it might still be 8 shows a week, but only for 4 weeks. In this kind of thing, though we are only running for 6 to 7 weeks, with the scare actors, it's back to back to back, scare, is making sure that the repetition is not numbing to them, because it affects safety, it affects guest safety, it affects guest interaction, it affects whether or not the event is just downright boring. I can't imagine, screaming at the top of my lungs to scare people for 6 hours straight. And it works the same thing on the show side as well, because, they're doing 6 shows a day. So before you know it, even at the end of just a weekend, you've done 18 shows. So you've done twice as many shows than you're asked to do in the professional world. The shows are shorter, yes, But it's still a lot. It's still trying to give 100% for everything. And I always tell people, you give 100% for the day, you can't give 100% every time you perform, because 600% is not an option. So how do you give 100% all day and pace yourself accordingly? A lot of it to me is, and this we had to work a lot over my 4 years doing this. You know, my first year in was kind of like throwing me in with a thing of piranhas and hoping for the best, because it was such a different world from the stage managing as I was used to it. And I think the biggest thing for me was realizing that if you actually take the amount of time you have to take in the training process, those 2 weeks of rehearsal, you can resolve a lot of incidents that may occur. For example, my first year, I deal with all guest complaints that come in for entertainment. And what would happen is I would have like 20 or 30 over the course of the 7 weeks of that thing. By the time I got to the third year, we managed to eliminate where we had none, not a one. We still had employee issues as far as people getting along, disagreements, things like that. But at least that's kind of like the weird aunt you don't talk about. No one sees it. So as far as how it happens, it's different because it's kept inside the family at that point. So I think that's the biggest thing. So dealing with safety, how to deal with things. Once I knew the types of incidents they were dealing with, it was easy to meet with the groups and say, in this location, you deal with a lot of this. In this location, I have my team track all accidents like crazy, and you know this. So if we have a special form, a special sheet they fill out. So it's not just health services. So I can go back and look at a location and say, we have a lot of slip and falls there. Why do we have that? We look at the ground. Sometimes it's an aggregate. Sometimes it's pavement of some smooth pavement that's been painted over, so it's slicker. An area might be a lot more tripping or things like that because it's super, super dark, like one location in the park. So we look for those types of things. I also look for cases of individuals who maybe have lots of run-ins with things, to say that not that they're not a good performer, but maybe they belong in a different location the next time we bring them in. Because a lot of our scare actors are people that come back all the time. I do the same thing with performers in general, though. I look at them and say, okay, they have a known knee injury, so maybe a show where they're constantly jumping off a 6-foot platform is not the place for them. Maybe the show over there where everything is just dance is an easier task, or they belong in this show because they have a history of back issues. Maybe they should do 20 lifts in 30 minutes, 6 times a day. Those types of things. So we look at those things to track it. So I think everything in the training process is incredibly helpful, and reminding them of it. And that seems to resolve a lot of it. The rest of it is making sure you travel around constantly, checking in on things, and noticing them and fixing them immediately then. More importantly, we spend a lot of time hiring. We have a very, I won't say intense hiring process, but everyone goes through 2 rounds of interviews at least. We do the first round of interviews with stage managers, and after that we do a second round. And that interview process is based on whether or not we're considering them more for event or a show aspect, a show to do. The questions are similar, but how we focus is a little different, because that is where the biggest thing comes. Is we want to make sure that so not just what type of, whether we're doing a show or an event with them, what type of product we're putting them with as well. Some people, if they have a background in dealing with customer service, they're better in a village. It's more successful for them, and setting them up for success early on helps them, the team as well, and build a trust. Nothing is worse for anyone out there. If your cast does not trust you, you may as well quit. Because to earn back the trust if you've done something big is near to impossible. It truly, truly is difficult. So we spend a lot of time working on placement, those types of things, to really fix issues that we have. And I think for the most part, we're successful. There are times I wish we could be more aggressive in our scares, but we deal with a lot of injuries where team members are just straight out punched in the face by a guest, claiming they scared me. I had one person headbutt somebody 3 times. They scared me. That's a headbutt 3. That makes sense. I think those are some of the bigger challenges, but they can be resolved by that aspect of it. And trusting the team to make the calls. I'm a firm believer. If they don't call you and they have to make a decision quickly, make the decision. If the decision can be made differently, It's not about anyone being in trouble. It's more about next time this happens, what if we? You know what I mean? Otherwise, you're going to get every phone call, a radio call possible, known to mankind. And whenever someone truly, truly needs you, you're always on the other side of the park. I spend more time trying to find my way through that park during Halloween, and all the shortcuts that happen that aren't as lit because the guests aren't going through them than anyone could ever imagine. I don't think people realize this in a theme park setting, where like a normal time of the year, a theme park may have 6 shows and maybe an event type thing happening somewhere, like a themed event for 4 weeks, that type of thing. During Halloween, I employ, I want to say 17 stage managers, sometimes 19 because of the swings as well. So now you do that, now you do the trickle down from there. If everyone called you with every little thing, you would never be able to answer everything because other things come into play. My favorite is the rain nights, where the radio starts at 6 o'clock and you just pray for midnight. You grab the bull by this. It's like going on a roller coaster. The hill starts and you're like, this is it. We're done. I've gone on many roller coasters, got to the top and said, what was I thinking? It's going to be a long 35 seconds of my life.
But on the flip side of that, what is your favorite part about Halloween specifically that you really love? The casts? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can say straight out that I love the casts. I don't get to see show casts as much because the event side of things takes so much focus. So someone that works for me actually during the day tries to go visit the cast more so. And I usually tell them when they first come in for the season, I try to tell them, you won't see me as much, you'll see so-and-so. Because someone that works for me hates to be scared, so she only works the day shift. And then I think the casts and getting to know them, even though they're not there for long, something I like to try to pride myself on is that I may not remember everyone's name because I might meet you once, and the next time I see you, you're in some huge clown makeup. So I don't always recognize you, or you've got these scars all over your face, and I'm like, I think it's one of 10 people. So I kind of know people by village, but when I see you and know that aspect, I can pretty much tell you at least one thing about every team member that works for me. Sometimes I remember you not for good reasons, sometimes for wonderful reasons. Sometimes we had a discussion of something weird in common, or I know the names of pretty much every child that's been born to a team member in the last 4 years, even with my wonderful love for children. So I just think that there are those types of things, and I think it makes people feel special. If you can turn around and say, you were sick yesterday, how are you feeling? Or you hurt yourself last weekend, how's your ankle? Just even something like that, asking them how they're feeling as opposed to them. I think everyone assumes they're getting in trouble. So I think getting to know the team members for me is a great experience. I don't get to see the joy of the performers of the guests being scared. I don't get to see that as much. Every now and then I'll see something that's incredibly funny, but I don't see that as much as other times of the year. I get to sit back and watch that guest experience happen.
So in what ways does your position interact with stage managers, and what can stage managers do to kind of enhance that collaboration and make it as good of a working relationship as possible?
They interact in every way possible. It is the strangest thing ever. The best way they can make the collaboration best is making sure that they're detailed, that there's detail on the reports at the end of the night. And the reason being is that I'm not there every shift. The supervisors that work for me, that the stage manager report bring to, aren't there for every shift. Now, what I will say is I am up at 1 a.m. every night of Halloween. If I'm not there because I had the earliest shift that day, or someone else is taking from 10 o'clock to midnight afterwards for me, I'm up at 1 a.m. reading every report that comes through. And I'm sending emails sometimes. Sometimes I'm getting emails back from that person, or the next day they're responding back. Most of it is asking things specifically about injury, or I've seen this thing has been broken for a while, let me help you fix it kind of thing. So detail in the report, because to me the reports, though they're not officially a legal document, they are also a legal document. And because they also come through to me realistically as a PDF, which means once the PDF is done, you can alter it, but there's a lot more work to that, I think that's the best way in that sense. And for the statement to be honest with me, saying, here's the issue we're having. It's not about wrong. It's more about how we fix it as a whole. From the collaborative side, I think, And it's interesting because I don't do their training.
Right.
One of my supervisors does the training. And I've looked over all the training and done everything else, and it tweaks itself every year a little bit. But I think more so, I think it's the checking in process with them on a nightly basis whenever I can. And there are times I don't make it to them because so much has happened. But I think that's the biggest thing, and knowing that there's someone to talk to. If I'm duty that night, they have access to my personal cell phone, not just the duty cell. So if for some reason they think of something after the fact, I mean, I have a 40-minute drive home anyway. So, give me a ring kind of thing, because there's sometimes I leave and they're still doing paperwork. I've gotten many a phone call after the fact saying, you weren't here when I got back, but here's the deal. I think it's being there for people and understanding what they have to go through. I think also for them, the collaboration of it sometimes is this: when they have to address a team member issue, sometimes they need more than themselves there. It's easy to pass down the buck and say, well, here's what you're going to do, here's what you can say, for simple things. But once you've had the conversation 2-3 times, it needs to be the next person, whether it be one of my supervisors, whether it be myself, whoever's on duty, that kind of thing, to be there to support. Because I think when someone from the office shows up, people all of a sudden respond a little differently, or take it a little more seriously in that respect. My favorite is when when I show up for things, the team members get nervous and they tell me something that I knew nothing about, and the stage manager didn't bother to tell me because they think it was that big of a deal anyway. And I'm like, oh, really? I don't care, Those types of things. I would rather sometimes know too much than not enough, because everything relates to the other thing. I spend a lot of time investigating comments that come to me. I would not put it past me for someone to come to me and I will not have an answer for 3 days, because I have interviewed an entire cast of Amaze, all 30 people, asking for certain information, things like that, to find out that what I'm being told isn't true. Or I find that they've all brought up these 10 things, but really only one of them overlaps. So I think that's the issue at hand. I think it's really listening to things, because we live in a world where people don't like to go and address the issue up front. So let's say a cast member is having an issue with their stage manager, for example. The question is, did you tell your stage manager that you felt that way? Well, no. You want me to go do this for you? To me, that's just not an option. You need to try to address the issue first, unless you truly think it's going to be something of a truly threatening nature. I understand I've never had this happen, but if someone were truly inappropriate with you, I understand not wanting to address the issue. But when it's, well, they were really snippy towards me, it really hurt my feelings. Did you tell them later? Can we talk again? You seemed really upset the other day, this and that, because it could be the fact people don't realize this from a management side of things, for stage managers, for myself and everything. We may be on issue number 100 2.5 hours into the evening, and no one else knows that, because we're not complaining about that. We're just letting it eat us up inside until we can later get somewhere and be in a safe space and maybe vet with another stage manager, just to say, the night I have had. Those types of things. People don't realize that the grass is always greener. I would rather someone come to my office and vent. I don't care what words they use. I don't care how they word it. I don't think any of it's offensive. I've had some times where people later on are like, why were they yelling at you? I'm like, it wasn't directed at me. It's just been one of those nights, and it's a safe place. It doesn't have to leave. If there are things that come out of it that I have to tell my supervisors, the supervisors that work for me, so they know, because they're duty managers also, that's okay. If I think it's something that's going to make it up even higher up the chain, I let the person above me know, because that way if they're at a meeting, I don't want them to get caught off guard. But for the most part, it stays... It's not even a question of confidential. It's just the fact that venting is healthy. A stage manager, the burnout rate is 4 years. The national burnout rate for a stage manager is 4 years. So you choose a profession, you spend just as long doing the profession possibly as you did in school studying.
Speaking of the collaboration and everything, what qualities would make someone a good fit for your position specifically, or similar positions at other theme parks? Because I'm sure you're not interested in someone replacing you just now.
Right.
But then also, just as a stage manager for a theme park, to someone that you would work with, I might fit into this world of Halloween events and theme parks.
I think for the event side of things, it's someone who has, well, on the show side, we looked at people who have maybe had a variety of backgrounds in shows, outdoor venues, indoor venues, theater in the round, those types of things. It helps us with placement, opens up more possibilities, because an outdoor venue creates a whole different aspect of things than a normal indoor venue does, or proscenium stage type aspect does. I think from the other side is the event side of things. So if someone is a stage manager, but it also has done a lot of outside events on their own, for me, it's been helpful to have a little bit of a technical background, though it's not as kept up to speed in some of the technology as what we use now. I think I have a background in company management, the world of tours, which gives you that feeling of you're kind of alone sometimes on an island. I think a variety of everything has been helpful, as opposed to being hired into a position like I have right now at the age of 28. If I had been hired into a position at the age of 28, they'd have fired me easily by now, because I probably would have hit somebody straight out. I've been like, oh, does it count if I'm not caught? Kind of. No one sees it. If a tree falls in the forest and no one hears it, it didn't happen. I think that it's everything. This management background has helped. I think learning a little bit of management style, even outside of stage management, has helped. Now, everyone that works for me currently as full-time all come from the stage management world. It works great for operations. So I think that that's incredibly helpful. I think it's the all-encompassing aspect. If you have been just a stage manager for my position, I don't think it's great. I think you need the office side of things, the administrative side. Have you dealt with budgets? Have you dealt, whether it's labor budgets or actual budgets? Have you dealt with human resource issues? General little conversations you have with cast members, not the same as the HR issues that I deal with. I have never been in a place with like the HR issues I deal with, because they're so unusual. You don't work someplace where the customer punched you in the face. Those aren't normal things, and in my world, that's like 10 a night. Sometimes in one location, So it's very difficult because I work a lot with security. So I think having a position somewhere where we've worked with a lot of different departments at one time, a lot of different personalities, that kind of stuff in the background is incredibly helpful for these types of positions, for an operations type position, because there is customer service, there is working with all age groups. I mean, during the Halloween product in the morning, I have children around, because there's a children's location with performers, and then in the afternoon, going into the evening, it slowly switches over, and in the evening, it's all the scare stuff, and it's different people, and some of them, I truly believe there are accidents where you scare somebody and they've been drinking, and they do accidentally hit. There's a difference between this kind of punch and you've scared me and my hand hits you. That and it's deciphering that too. So I think that okay, here's the best thing. You have to have the ability to step outside of yourself and look at things so outside of the situation, where I'm not on anyone's side. I don't think anyone's guilty at the time. I need the information. I need to step outside of things. And sometimes that requires that even I have to admit, sometimes I'm not the best person to deal with that issue. I have some things that I will send one of my supervisors to deal with. I'm like, it's with this person. I'm not the person normally that gives the loving hand. Oh, are you okay today? I'm more of so this happened and this happened and this happened. So I may go deal with this issue while you're off dealing with the person who just really needs to feel appreciated that day. Because it sounds a little more fake coming from me. I think every aspect of theater is helpful. Having a little bit of technical background has been helpful to me. So I at least know when people tell me something can't be done, I look at you and go, can't be done, or it's hard to do. Those are two different things. It's hard to do, so you don't want to do it, or it can't be done. You also have to be willing to admit your own faults. I actually work with an entire team of people. When I first started, they looked at me and said, I can't say that, but I met with everyone that worked for me, and I said, if I'm ever being an idiot, just look at me and say, you're being an idiot. It's really okay. I'm not offended, because like you may be my 50th issue, and I've been here 4 hours today. And eventually you just might be that straw that breaks the camel's back. More so than multitask, you have to be able to think fast, because you sometimes need a solution, an answer quick, and moving on to the next thing. And I'm sure you've heard it too, because you may call and ask me for something, and I'll say, well, just do this, this, and this. Like, I don't understand why I'm having this question. Because what's happening in the background is I'm dealing with this other issue that, I don't know, someone tried to light something on fire. I don't know, we've had, you've got this issue at this location. I've got a pyro issue over here. And my mind is on the pyro issue. Very much more so, So I don't mean to sound short on the phone, but I'm a Libra. I weigh everything. I just do it on Red Bull, so I do it really fast. And I give the answer, and then I'm ready to move on. I also held a position at one point in my life where if you did not make your point in 15 seconds, you had to leave the room and come back. So when you came in, in 15 seconds, you couldn't, which is 2 or 3 sentences maybe, get them to make your point and have enough interest to want to hear more. You had to leave the room and come back.
You sort of touched on this already, but what would you recommend as a good first step for someone that's interested in being like on track to get to this kind of position, this kind of upper management in a theme park?
I think coming from stage management is a great way to go. But what I do think is that stage management, I think, helps really build and hone interpersonal skills. So a stage manager who maybe went to the technical side, or a technician who maybe went to stage manager for 2 years and then come back, kind of thing. Those types of things that lead up to it. I also think having lots of jobs out in the world, which is good for me. I'm an outsider in the theme world park industry. What I love about the theme park industry and things like that is they do a lot of promoting from within. And I think that is an incredible thing for a company. I would swear by it, but I also know that after a while, some fresh blood is always useful. It's also dangerous. And it can be very frustrating for that new blood. Because nothing is worse. Everyone's out there's had this. That's not the way we've always done it. It doesn't mean that it's wrong. It just means that maybe for me, this is more effective and will work better. There's always room for improvement. And it's tough to take off those goggles that we all have sometimes and say, I've been in positions for a long time, but that kind of stuff. So I think stage management is helpful. Different types of theater, just standard proscenium theater will not be the most useful to you. I think experiencing outdoor theater, touring children's theater, you deal with, when you're touring a children's show, you're in a different venue every day, and God help you. And you're lucky if you have one of those touring children's shows where you're actually in theaters, as opposed to the cafetoriums in school, where you're doing, yay, let's perform. What are they doing? They're cleaning the trays. It's okay. You can hear the water, the clanging, the crashing. They'll be done by the 10 minutes into the show, that kind of thing. I think those types of things. I think the jobs that put you in the weirdest situations at times are the most helpful. If you've gone and done more of the equity world and then come to this, it is a much more difficult aspect. I think now I have had a stage manager who's did a lot of equity type work, and then came to this, and for a show product for the right show, it was incredibly successful.
Is there a single story that kind of sticks out in your mind as particularly memorable that you're allowed to tell us? Because that's going to be the big question, is whether you're allowed to say it or not.
For these types of events, we deal with a lot of guests who sometimes they get scared, so they're embarrassed, and that's why they lash out. Sometimes they're truly scared. I do believe some people truly get, and I believe our team at times also does things incorrectly. At times, they'll scare people, and I'll be like, you saw they had that little child with them. Why did you bother? It's hard not to. And yes, I understand it gets scary at a certain time, but you didn't have to go for the child in the stroller. You did not have to do that to make my life more difficult. So I think I've dealt with have I got some doozies. Wow. If I'm never, ever, ever with the theme park world again, after this furlough, whatever the case is, then I'll come back on and I'll tell you some stories. Wow, because I got some stories. I can tell you a very funny story. But this hasn't with Halloween. It happened at the Christmastown event where I was at the Rudolph event, and I was talking to maintenance, and I dropped something, and the park hadn't opened yet, but there were 150 people in line came to Rudolph, and I bent down to pick it up, and I stood up, my belt popped, and my pants fell down on my ankle, and they started calling me Flasher, the ninth reindeer. I can tell that one, because that was about me. That's about me, only me. And no one believed me until I pulled my belt out of my pocket. and gave it to my boss.
Is there any advice you'd like to share with the future theatrical professionals that might be watching this video and hoping to break into this crazy industry that we all love so much?
If you actually want to go into theater, there is no such thing as a backup major. You either do it or you don't do it. Writers write because they have to, not because they want to, meaning they have to put their pen to paper. They must do it. It's like an addiction. So this is the exact same thing. You either want to do this or you don't. If you have a backup major, you're going to end up doing your backup major. Either do this or don't, and just understand that you better find a way to eat on a very small amount of whatever. Doesn't look like I ate on a small amount of anything, but I just eat healthy because unhealthy food's really cheap. But I think that is the best piece of advice. If you want to do this, you have to give it your all, risk your all, and then do it.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. I appreciate it. And thank you so much for watching, liking, commenting, and subscribing. My name is Kent, and this has been your half-hour call.
Take care.
This snazzy feathered production assistant, as well as other cool stage management merchandise, is now available at kentjamescollins.com/store. Link in the description below.